G'day all, welcome back to the channel. Today we're talking about Australia's left. Not everyone that's left is a fanatic, but with the recent events with all that Charlie Kirk assassination that's been all over the world the last few days, it's really brought out a lot of extremist views on social media locally here. And this video here isn't about Charlie Kirk. He's just a symptom now of what we're seeing on social media and a lot of the hatred out there. So let's jump into it. I've got quite a few thoughts on it. And once again, I'm not saying every single person who is left-leaning is a nut job, but there are plenty of them out there.
To the influencers. Just hours after US conservative activist Charlie Kirk was assassinated, Australian left-leaning political influencers turned their attention to criticising the father of two. The story is about Abby Chatfield and Hannah Ferguson, two disgusting humans who thought the murder of a political figure was the perfect time to tell the world just how hateful he was. No empathy from these radical extremists on the left. And let me read you something that Hannah Ferguson wrote about the assassination. Must we condemn every act of political violence? Should violent views be met with violence? What is the most moral approach, and should we take the high road?
Let me just make a comment on my thoughts on these kind of women who say things like this on the internet, with strong feminist views hiding behind a screen, hiding behind a platform. It's all good to talk tough, protected by that separation of technology. The reality is all of these women and Abby Chatfield and all these people who say all these silly things, these hateful things, the moment any real conflict would come their way, any minor threat of any violence would come their way, they will crumple like paper. And I don't wish that to happen to them. All I'm saying is that there's a lot of tough talk that goes on the internet, and a lot of these people on TikTok are very big perpetrators of that. And that's the thing here in Australia. Number one, if you're a woman, you can say just about anything you want without being called a nut job, apart from Sky News calling them out. There's no pushback. If I was on the internet saying all sorts of horrible things about even him, if I was saying horrible things about this assassination, I'd probably be called out about it because I'm a dude. So it's a massive double standard in society. That's the first part. The other part of this is, and I don't talk about the people they're going to talk about in this video for a reason, because I don't want to give them any more exposure. Now, they're very prominent people out there, but they're calling them large-scale professional political influencers. Now, they're people with very strong opinions and views, and they see a world a certain way. Fair enough. Everybody sees the world a certain way. We're all different. But getting out and attacking people on the internet with no consequence seems to be the norm.
How much empathy can you give someone who rejects that fundamental human notion? What chain of events does an assassination set off? What does our global response to Kirk's death say about us? While these important questions are asked, the right is mobilising to make a martyr of Kirk. And as for Abby Chatfield, well, she posted yesterday, the right and possibly the left will become more violent in replacement of actual democracy. Kirk will be martyred, and they won't see that this is because of right-wing views on gun control that this could even happen.
I think it's really interesting because you've got these people, we're living here in Australia, getting really worked up about American politics. And then unfortunately, that's all bleeding over into Australia. And we're getting a lot of those, well, we're not getting them, we already have them. But they were looked at like they were complete lunatics probably even 10 years ago, right? The greenies, the extreme wokies, the ones lying on the road and gluing themselves to the concrete for environmental protests and all. You think, what a complete pack of nutcases. They are now a very prominent voice in this country. And for me, because you know what that is? And it is a symptom of, it is tough here in Australia, right? All about the cost of living, housing, future, stability, and all of that. So they're disenfranchised, and for some reason that's the fault of anybody who doesn't have these hard left-wing political ideals. And so they really get radicalized by that. It's like just about anarchy. Because as I said, like that killer, so I did pick it right, and I don't want to punt on this thing, but my initial first video I made about it, I said, yeah, it's going to be some nutjob young kid, university student. And there you go. It has turned out to be that before I started smoking on the glass Barbie. Started cooking on the glass Barbie with theories.
But of course, here she was last July, apparently calling for Americans to assassinate President Donald Trump.
Americans, when are you going to do it? Why isn't it already done? Every day there's another happening, right? Awful for your country. Awful, right? Why don't we redirect this energy to something else? You know? There's all these incels that are going, oh, what the me? So they go and do, you know what would actually make people respect you a little bit and make people want to you? Is if you did it.
This is someone who's getting a lot of traction, and we will talk about this. Anthony Albanese doing interviews with him. What's going on with that? Completely unhinged nut job. As I said, you can put that stuff on the internet. That's inciting. You can read in between the lines of what she's saying. She didn't specifically say a name, but she's inciting that sort of behaviour. Once again, it goes back to my earlier point. I'm not trying to be sexist and misogynist, right? What I'm saying is these chicks can come on the internet, these women, call them whatever you want, and say whatever they want. No recourse at all. The only channel calling these people out is Sky News. That's why I watch Sky News. For whatever reason, or there is a reason, but you look at news.com.au, for example, they give like that Abby chick a lot of airtime. She gets a lot of articles written about the things she said and her views, and they're mostly in support of her. I just want to think, what's the credential of this particular person to be influential to a lot of these whack jobs? What, she was on a dating show and failed miserably at that. Well, a farmer wants a wife or something like that, whatever it might have been, a bachelor. So that's your credential for being a political commentator. I'm not being a political commentator. I'm a social commentator. I watch all these different videos. And as I said, I don't lean anyway. I seriously don't. I'm not a political person. I decide to observe and watch this content because I find it very interesting, but also it's very alarming. It's very alarming.
So why am I talking about these awful people? Why do these nobodies matter at all? Well, it's because Labor has courted the so-called progressive and empathetic new media voice. They get invited to press functions, and despite their extremist and disturbing views on political violence, in that passage above, even going so far as to question whether some views should be met with violence, people like Prime Minister Anthony Albanese pander to them and to their captured audiences.
I'm 26, I'm interviewing the Prime Minister. Most politicians have actively sought out an interview on my platform, and I've said no to most. The Prime Minister and his team wanting to have an interview and have it on Big Small Talk and Cheek is not about me at all.
It's not.
It is about the audience that I have cultivated who are engaged, progressive Australians who give a fuck about the future of this country, and he wants to use me to speak to them. I think it says a lot about Anthony Albanese and his team that they are opening their doors the day after the budget to me.
She doesn't even realise. She's exactly right. It's not about you. They've seen you as someone to tap into your fanatical echo chamber viewer base. And that's going to be Labor voters. Of course, that's being completely used. It's not about you. So she's sort of half bragging about it. That's why these people are given a platform, especially on mainstream media networks, because they're spreading it. And once again, I'm not about political hate. I think it actually is getting pretty bad here in Australia as well. A lot of people, why does there need to be a side? Why do there need to be sides? I don't get it. You know, you're either this or you're that. And if you don't agree with my opinion, I'm going to shout you down. As I said, a lot of these people who say these things, even just a few years ago, you would have been called a complete whack job. I ignore them.
Well, joining me to discuss is News Corp senior writer Patrick Carline and, of course, Sky News afternoon editor James Bolt joining me here on the desk. James, one of the things that she said there in that grab was that Anthony Albanese wanted to use her and her presence and her following, and I think that she called them brave progressives. I think that it really does put some of these politicians in a very awkward light when the mask is taken off and some of these more extremist views, particularly about violence, kind of creating this paradigm that there is some sort of a justification for violence.
I want to say one thing about all these progressives, okay? They hate Australia. They hate their own country. Let that sink in. There's no patriotic behaviour at all. It's all the patriarchy and bringing down the system and importing 1 billion people here and singing Kumbaya. They say, I give an F about the future of this country. No, you just give an F about being heard. You just give an F about being the centre of your own main character story arc on the internet. Guys, halfway, and girls, consider subbing to the channel if you are new to the channel. Like, comment, share, press the hype button. That really helps me out. You can find that in the comments section. You can scroll left or right, and then it should pop up if you're on your mobile device. If it's not there, it doesn't always come onto every video. Appreciate everybody supporting the channel recently. Let's keep the growth going. And I want to hear your thoughts. I want to hear your thoughts on all this.
It's awkward politically for the people who have courted them.
Yeah, I've got to say, like, those videos that you just played were so disgusting. I've actually lost my train of thought. I can't believe some of the things that were just said there. But I just think... So I don't think in their heart of hearts either of those commentators truly believe that political violence is justified. I know what Abby Chatfield just said about Donald Trump is so disgusting, but I don't think if you took the camera away and asked her face to face, is political violence justified against the other side, she would say no. But the fact is, they both... Abby Chatfield seems to think it's entertaining for her audience to just start questioning, hey, when are you going to do it? And the other, Hannah Ferguson, saying, okay, well, you know, maybe if you really swim in controversial areas that maybe sometimes it can't be justified. No, absolutely not. And their audience might not think that the same, but I'll tell you what, we don't know who did this shooting, we don't know why they did this shooting, but we can, from previous assassinations or attempted assassinations, know that very sick people are listening. And if you are not out there strongly saying political violence is never okay, that there is no justification to ever use a gun against someone for expressing their views, someone is going to think, okay, maybe I could impress Abby Chatfield by doing this. Maybe I could impress Hannah Ferguson by doing this.
Yeah.
I mean, the shooter for Ronald Reagan thinking he was going to impress Jane Fonda. Like, that's...
There is no qualification that makes it acceptable. And Patrick, welcome.
I would surely argue that if anyone's going to go and do that, I'll debate this point. If anyone's going to go and do that, I don't think anyone saying, don't go and do that, it's not good, is going to change their mind. But my view is, yeah, a lot of these influencers are very performative. They'll say abrasive stuff because it gets them lots of views on TikTok and stuff, and they make a lot of money. It's a platform, it's a business. Podcasts, they make money. So it's tapping into a subset of Australia that they can further radicalise by saying over-the-top things. Over-the-top things. I think it is performative to an extent, but I also do believe that there is a belief in this. But as I said, it's this sort of tough talk, this sort of straight line, more or less inciting violence, gloating at someone being assassinated. It's all good and well to do it behind the separation of the technology and the screen. But I've seen, that Abby Chatfield crying and carrying on when people challenge her or roast her, or they say horrible things back to her. So it's saying one thing, putting out vile material, but when vile things come her way on the internet, screaming, carrying on, crying, posting these videos of her crying, there's multiple of them. Is that someone who's a stable influencer who gets rattled by any form of debate? And that's probably another thing I want to talk about, and what I've noticed here in Australia. A lot of people who have this sort of ideology, you cannot debate it in any way. You cannot talk about it in a level-headed manner in any way. It's, you don't agree with me, so I'm not listening to you. You're wrong, and they'll say you're a nut job, or you're a fascist, or whatever word they throw around, fascist. That's the word they love throwing around. You're neoliberal Nazi. Or it literally comes down into being stonewalled or being abused. Or people just blatantly not liking you because you're not agreeing with whatever stuff they come up with. But it's really interesting how this has grown from a few whack jobs. This is grown. And I won't say on the right hand, I'm not a right-leaning person. I'm nothing. I'm me. It's easy to say that too. Look at the March for Australia, and you get these people who are the right version of Abby Chatfield, and they get up there on the stand and they say all sorts of just crap that only really appeals to the fringes. And it ruins the message. So I'm not going to say that it only happens on, I guess, on one side of politics or views on the world. I think it was a more recent one. There was one in Brisbane, and I saw a video on that. And yeah, this dude was up there, this cooker dude was up there saying all sorts of stuff that didn't appeal to the main audience of who was there. People just want to go out and support Australia, and a lot of people left. And once again, it was turned into a far-right rant. So I'm not going to just sling shit on the left here. And that's what I mean. A lot of this stuff, a lot of this fanaticism and side-taking, definitely we're a little America now. It's a bit concerning. I don't recall, and I know that is the ignorance of being younger, not caring about politics, not thinking about politics. When I was a 20-year-old, I never thought about this stuff. Never even heard anyone talking about it. Now you got all these young people talking about all these left or right. It's just a really strange world we're living in. And then you got these people, a lot of the people coming from, they get radicalized, it's almost through the university indoctrination complex. Because a lot of the stuff that is taught there is by people who have these views, and those views are then pushed onto students.
To the show, I'd love to bring you in here. I think I get what James is saying here about they may be just talking to their captured audience and don't necessarily mean it. But on a certain level, you've got to take people on face value for what they say. And if you've got somebody here saying, well, in some situations, violence is appropriate, and they're supposed to, Hannah Ferguson's the woman that stood up at Press Club, as you would know, and said, I'm going to run for office and I'm the face of this new media revolution about being kind and empathetic, etc. These two things don't necessarily match, and I take them on their face value. If you're saying...
that's the biggest lie ever as well. Because at least if you look at people who are right-leaning, they don't masquerade as saying, we're super caring, let's jump around the campfire, kumbaya, we're tolerant. They've got their views straight down the line, unapologetic for it. There's no real bullshit there. But as I said, the biggest lie is that you got the people of the tolerant left, and they're the more upstanding citizens of society with a more humanitarian and egalitarian view on the world. And to me, I think that's a load of BS. As I said, I made a video yesterday that had some other Victorian Socialist Party dude there carrying on, making sure that his racism parade that they were organising clashed with just average people walking in the street for March for Australia type events. Interesting world we live in, like straight up looking for violence. It doesn't get called out enough.
To me, that you think violence is acceptable, then I think that's the view that you hold.
Look, I tend to agree, Jack. I mean, both of them are basically sort of discriminated between levels of evil here. They sort of said, well, this is a bad thing, political violence is a bad thing. But at the same time, this person, Charlie Kirk, espoused views that disagreed with mine. And I think that's probably the big point I'd like to make. This isn't about Charlie Kirk or Anthony Albanese. It's about Hannah and Abby actually pandering to audiences. It's about them actually, trying to make a point, which is irresponsible. I agree with James completely. It is totally irresponsible. It's a powder keg sort of scenario that America faces at the moment. And to try and cash in on that, and I think that's the right way of putting it, to actually try and leverage that for audience and for...
See that? Screaming. Screaming is the way of delivering messages, highly emotive, with a little iPhone in her bedroom. And people are taking this person seriously as someone to watch and feel inspired by. I think violence is abhorrent. I don't condone it in any way. I think in a civilized society, debate should be encouraged. Especially violence for having a certain viewpoint. I'm not talking about Charlie Kirk. He's an extreme example, which has made this all flare up. Think about when you see these protesters. You go to the city, they've got the pro-Palestinian Hamas protesters, and you got these average Aussies joining that and waving, Palestinian flags around and burning the Australian flag and spitting on people at March for Australia and getting in people's faces with megaphones, straight to violence. And then someone drops one of them on their head, and probably deservedly so, out of self-defense, and then it's violence from the far right. As I said, we got one-sided media here. I think as you get a little bit more experience in life, I think the more wiser you get, more experience you get, the more you can just look at these things and look at just how the different messaging is conveyed. Would you not say, as a reasonable human being, that if someone gets shot and killed, even if you didn't like them or like what they said, because they're just words, people. Let's just remember, it's just words. That you got so many Americans, even Australian people, not just these two, celebrating it and dancing up and down and doing little jigs and dances and showing how happy they are that, someone's dead. Kids don't have a father because they didn't like what he said. You know why they didn't like what he said? Because he antagonized them, because at the end of the day, he poked holes in the arguments and they can't more or less have any structured way of communicating their arguments to him apart from emotion and screaming. That's what a lot of his... Watch some clips if you're interested. It just boils down to people screaming at the end because they can't argue with him. So what's the thing? This dude with the transgender girlfriend, or whatever you want to call it, the situation, felt the need to go and shoot him. I don't know. As I said, I've got nothing against trans. Do whatever you want. Who cares? No one cares. To so push it in everyone's face. No one gives a shit who you have sex with. Do what you want. Who cares? We're past that.
Or entertainment and for a greater audience sort of share, it really is irresponsible and infantile and wrong.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Staying on this, though, a post by Hannah Ferguson's company, Cheek Media, about Charlie Kirk, where she criticised him hours after his death. Well, these are some of the comments that people left behind. Perhaps a bit of empathy and condemnation against political violence would be more appropriate. This is disgusting and tacky, and this post should be taken down. Extremely poor taste. He has a wife and 2 children, should be ashamed for posting this. I am ashamed that you are an Australian account. Charlie was extremely tolerant, and his whole platform was about open debate and tolerance of opposing ideas. He has never called for violence. This is a disgusting take. Killing a person because you disagree with their politics is always wrong. Always. Now, it's worth noting the Cheek Media post was liked by the Liberal Party's female recruiter, Charlotte Mortlock, who runs the Hillman Network, which claims it will cure the party's political woes by recruiting women who are more Teals aligned. Perhaps people like Anna Ferguson.
I find it really interesting as well. This is just an observation. Especially here in Australia, I'd say the majority of females would be left-leaning, would be in the woke brigade. Because I want to say something. I get a lot of hate on this channel. I get a lot of hate on social media. It's mostly from women. So I don't know. It's I don't know. Very interesting correlation there, isn't it? A lot of nastiness, a lot of nasty, horrible things said to me in comments from time to time, just for having an opinion, just for making commentary that I didn't force anybody to watch. Crazy world we live in. I'm going to leave it there, guys. We don't need to drag it on any further. I think I've said my points. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.